We are going to talk you through how Tottenham dismantled AZ in a game that had a lot of pressure, not only on the results, but fans wanting to see whether Ange Ball does work with the right players. Were the injuries a valid reason for not seeing certain patterns of play, seeing things go wrong in previous games, and kind of putting together why today it worked, why this performance was different and better. And to help us with that is a licensed coach, JJ. How are you, JJ?
I'm good, thanks, Jim. Good to have a chance to talk about a victory.
Yeah, indeed. It is very refreshing to be able to talk about a victory this time. So, JJ, shall we start with the first goal? Because there was something in there which I think we've been missing following Spurs lately, and that was the press and the press delivering a result. What was your analysis of that moment of the game?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So the aggression of the press and the ability of the players to really commit to it and cover the grass and get across. And it was, there's an element of fortune to where the deflection goes when Son closes down the ball in the right back area. But if you look at the distance that Son has to make up, if you look at the way the rest of the team also moves up as part of the press, so it's been identified. Son goes really, really aggressively, and everybody then follows, and they follow in their positions. So they hold their lines on the pitch and they follow their positions. And what that leads to is, the ball does break kindly to Dom Solanke, but from there, it's quality from him. Two very quick, nice touches that then opens up a nice chance for Odobert. And the basic fact is that was a team that was aggressive and really committed to the press, and that's probably something we've been missing.
So, and something else in that game was WIlson Odobert's positioning, and he was a very important player in that victory. And we'll touch on him a little bit later in this video, and you can see why we were so desperate to add him to the squad and what a loss he was of his injury. But he looked in acres of space when Solanke crossed that ball through the 6-yard box, and I just thought that's a moment typically you would say, oh, classic Tottenham, they leave that much space for the opposition. But we seem to have all that space on this occasion. Is that poor defending from AZ, or was that something Tottenham did right, in your opinion, to find that space for Odobert?
I think both of those things are probably true. I think the RZ coach is going to feel pretty disappointed in the way that unfolded. So when the ball was played into the centre of midfield, so it was played from kind of centre half position to a player in Tottenham's half. He then is looking to knock the ball back, I think, to Classy. I think Classy has stepped back from the pivot into the centre half position. The centre half has moved out and he's knocked the ball back. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to do to us what we want to do to them, which is draw us on and then play through us, right? And Classy's got the ability to do that, but they get it wrong. So they get the technical parts of it wrong. The pass goes in between Classy and the centre half, and it sends them all now facing backwards. And at that point, that's when Tottenham come to life. They do the right things at the right time. We talked about Son and the really aggressive. So he really sprints into the press. He doesn't kind of jog up the pitch just to provide, a bit of pressure on the player. He really goes for him. And then when the player turns around and he's trying to swing the ball down the line, he's confronted with a player right on his toes. And then from that moment, Solanke moves up and Odobert moves up. Odobert starts that phase of play all the way back in his own half. So he's in his own half when that starts and he gets himself up. He's really, really aggressive and he gets himself in that position that we know that the Ange Ball system demands, that the winger on the opposite side has to get themselves into those spaces. He gets himself into a pocket of space, pulls out a little bit onto about the 6-yard line, and it's a really tidy finish.
And then the second goal as well, I think it's overlooked that also came from a press, but I think we were pressing in the opposite direction almost. Zeds were in there, they were pushing up into our third of the pitch, and then suddenly their player found themselves confronted with a wall of Dominic Solanke, Pedro Porro, I think it was Pape Matar Sarr, and Lucas Berrival. And then in a panic, he turns and he sees Wilson Odobert, standing, cutting his line off in the other direction. And James Maddison storming in on the only player he can possibly pass to, which naturally led to a complete panic moment, us dispossessing the ball, Wilson Odobert kind of falling to him, and us having a situation where we're 4-on-4 running at them. Lays it off to James Maddison really nicely, who I think we see as his technical quality here, but he unselfishly passes to Son, draws the defenders away, who pass it back to Maddison, and it's a beautiful finish. But what did you make of that moment? Was that again to me felt like Ange Ball? It's coming back. That's what it's all about, isn't it? You force the opposition into mistakes.
Yeah, exactly that. So a similar kind of thing. So just because it happens in a different place on the pitch, it's the same kind of thing. So as you've just identified, we throw a blanket over what RZ are trying to do at that moment. So we're throwing a lot of players, and we're obviously pulling all of our players over to one side of the pitch to try and box them in and to force an error. And in this case, it's not an error per se, but it's just really good front foot defending from Porro. So he deserves credit. You know, we criticise Porro about his defending, but this is kind of front foot intercepting. He gets in, and while the player turns his back and he sees, I haven't got a lot of options here, he maybe had one pass into midfield, but he's not quick enough to identify it. And then Porro does. He goes in and he says, right, while this guy's making his mind up, I'm going and I'm being on the front foot. He nicks it, he pokes it out, and it falls to a Tottenham player. And then we're off from there. And it's really progressive movement of the ball forward. So every pass until it gets to Sonny on the edge of the corner of the penalty area is a forward pass. So it's forcing RZ to retreat and to scramble, and it's allowing us to stretch and to move the opposition about. What happens off the back of that is really, really good technical play. Sonny cutting inside, really nice weight of a pass from Maddison. Maddison, a beautiful first touch, which sets the ball up for him to strike off his second touch. But what I haven't heard anybody say yet is you have to credit Pap Sarr. Pap Sarr doesn't have a great deal to do with this, except for one vital element. He absolutely busts a gut, and he runs 60 yards up the pitch, straight down the middle, to make sure that he pins and stretches the centre halves. And this is what allows Maddison that little area of space just inside the edge of the penalty area, because Pap Sarr's made that run on just in case Son goes down the outside and he crosses it in, but he also forces the centre halves to go back. It's absolutely brilliant. It's real commitment. I mean, Pap Sarr didn't have a huge amount to do with the game, but the bits that he did do, he did them really well. And he kind of came into his own later in the game with a few blocks and interceptions. So huge credit to him for stretching the defence and for doing that. And yeah, good technical play from Son and Matters to finish it off.
It was. And it was a lovely, well worked team goal. And it was just nice to see that cohesion from the front three again. That I think we were in the first leg, complete opposite situation, right? Where we're going, where is the cohesion? But there was the goal we conceded, JJ. There was something in there that I think is some fair, constructive criticism of where we've been a bit vulnerable in the past. And that is the whole threat. I know it was a mistake from Lucas Berryval and WIlson Odobert, mix up in communication that eventually led to us conceding the goal. But if we go back to where it started, it's from an AZ player on the edge of his own box, on the bottom right-hand corner of his own box, just hitting a long, direct ball up the pitch, and it bouncing past Archie Gray into the feet of one of the AZ wingers, who finds themselves in absolutely loads of space. And he's beaten Archie Gray for pace. You know, he's not a natural centre-back, Archie Gray there. And even though ultimately we do kind of win the ball back through WIlson Odobert, there is then a mistake. And when mistakes happen in the final third, you're always going to leave yourself exposed to conceding a goal. But I kind of feel like that was all avoidable from the phase before the one everyone's looking at. The phase where their right back just hoofs the ball up long, and a player finds themselves, 2-on-1 in our kind of area of the pitch. Did you identify any issues defensively there with us?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I was perhaps not entirely convinced by Archie Gray's positioning. He's moved up, and it looked to me, and again, because I was watching the game on TV, so I wasn't in the stadium, so it was more difficult for me to identify this because the camera angles that I saw didn't give, the whole of the pitch. So I couldn't see what Archie Gray was reacting to, but he'd moved up and in, which looked like he was trying to screen a pass, but it did leave a massive channel for the player just to knock the ball down the line. And for me, he didn't necessarily need to move up and into that position. I might be wrong. There might have been something going that I couldn't see on the screen. So the ball was played in. I felt like Archie Gray could maybe have positioned himself better or not gone into that position. But what we had seen directly before that is when you've got a player like Micky Van de Ven, that recovery pace and that strength,
Yeah.
right? And we'd seen it against Pocker. We'd seen him just, effectively us looking like we were in trouble. Even Jed Spence not being able to retreat in time. But Van de Ven's got that pace and that power. So he retreats in and he's able to bundle players out of the way and regain possession. Archie Gray doesn't have that same pace. So you have to take that into account when you know your limitations, you know what you can and you can't do, and I think they'll work on that with him in terms of whether that was the right time to go up and in to screen a pass, or whether he should have been sat a little bit deeper and covering the player.
Yeah, it just goes to show, and we'll probably touch on it at the end of it, the difference in which we play when we have those fit centre backs and that ability. I think people have gotten used to Archie Gray being such a good player for his age and kind of looking comfortable to the naked eye that perhaps we overlook he isn't a centre back. He's not Micky Van de Ven. Micky Van de Ven is a more effective centre back in this system, and not having that player there has really kind of had an impact on our ability this season to get certain games over the line and avoid certain goals. But the third goal, this was the best, wasn't it? The best was for last in terms of cohesion. Ange Ball again. We win the ball right back against our own goal. Jed Spence plays it out to James Maddison, who loses his man, and you see some player quality there from Maddison, where without him being fit, you perhaps don't get this beautiful bit of technique and run. Who then lays it again 1-2 of Jed Spence, who continues down the left, laid it off to Heung-min Son. So we're now in a third player involvement for this goal, who then takes on his man. He thinks he's going to take a shot, goes the wrong way, but Sonny lays it beautifully back to Spence again, who goes into Solanke, the fourth player in the phase, and then off to WIlson Odobert, the fifth player in the phase. So half our outfield players involved with that goal. No mistakes in their build-up. Absolutely brilliant play. What were your observations from that one?
This is the classic Ange Ball goal. So if you want to talk about the way the system works and what's required to make it work, it's playing out from the back. So we talked about why playing out from the back, when it works, why it's so dangerous. This was a great example. Now, obviously, RZ had to come on, even though the tie was all square at the time. They felt like they were, going to come on to us. And what we had managed to do with this is move the ball across the back. We'd moved it quickly enough, and then we got it out on the left-hand side, and it's all about the quality of individuals here and the bravery. So Maddison's turn, when that ball is played on the inside for him not to take a touch, to roll the midfielder and then get out of that space. He's taken out 2 RZ players. There are 4 RZ players up in a press there, but he's taken out the 2 that would cut him off if he took a touch. So again, it speaks to that bravery that you require to make this work. And then what we'd also managed to do is we managed to draw their double pivot up. And that was something that I thought was going to be important anyway. And because we'd done that, the next person that Maddison is running at is Geordie Classy, who's completely on his own in midfield. And the amount of times we see this against us, but it's because we have now drawn them on, played the ball out, and now there are huge gaps. And it's just really positive, progressive passing, moving the ball forward, moving it quickly, getting up against RZ quicker than they can get back to defend it. And then just really good execution. I thought that we were going to need kind of 3-man rotations happening in those wide areas up front to kind of get in against the deeper set RZ team. In this case, you've got I think it's Son Spence overlap, right? So there's only 2 players required because we've managed to play out from the back and RZ are stretched. And so it's a really, really simple. Son threatens the inside, so the 2 RZ players have to stay, and then Jed Spence goes on the outside. So he plays that classic little ball down the line. It's an overlap ball with a ball cut across the box. And then, nice touch from Solanke. Well done to Odobert for staying onside. He just about holds himself on the right side of the 6-yard line. And it's an easy tap in, but it's still getting yourself into the position, reading it, and the timing of it. It's a brilliant team goal, and it's classic Ange Ball.
Yeah. So and I think this is where there's dispute amongst the fans. And I guess I'm keen to get your thoughts, JJ, because when there's a lot of argument of we shouldn't play out the back as much as we do. We shouldn't play those risky passes. We should get better at hitting it long when we see a risky situation that could result in us losing the ball, it turned over. And we've seen that happen against us on numerous times. But no one's taking a tally of the times it results in a goal or it results in opportunity. We only take note of the times it really results in us losing a goal, really. So that was an example of when it works, right? That's an example of when, if you don't take that risk and you just hoof it up long instead, because there was a situation there where the ball originally from that third goal, sorry, it goes to Jed Spence in the corner. He's got 3 players around him. You could argue, what is Vicario doing passing to a player who's surrounded by 3 opposition players?
Yeah.
That could result in a goal conceded. Yet it's resulted in probably the best goal we've seen from Spurs as a team this whole season. So but to get good at that, you've got to take the risks, right? Tottenham have to go again and again and again and go through the mistakes to go, we're now comfortable, we're now confident, and we've got the players to get more of these right than wrong. Is that fair? Or should Spurs be more pragmatic and hit it more long, do you think?
Listen, at the end of the day, it's all very well doing this stuff on the training ground, but unless you put it into practice in competitive matches, you're not going to be able to execute it. You're not going to be able to do this. The system relies on bravery. The system relies on individuals taking responsibility and having moments. And so you've got to do that. This is what's required. I definitely feel that there are periods where we do it by rote and we could be better at identifying the situation, but you do still need to take the opportunities to do it. And, the moving of the ball across the pitch, we've got to back ourselves to be good enough in those situations to do it. We did it. It worked. We got out and we scored a brilliant goal. So at the end of the day, as you said, we need to give credit where it's due, as much as, being critical on the flip side of it.
And final, JJ, any other observations you want to flag from the game that we haven't spoken about already?
I think real credit needs to go again to Vicario, right? Because he provided a decent save at the end, a good moment from Troy Parrott where they got themselves into a decent position. We saw the 2 sides of Romero in that phase of play as well. He's come in and he's clearly very desperate to be successful and to help us to move forward through these cup games, but he's being a bit erratic. And there's a bit of that red card Romero mixed in with the brilliance of his passing. So if you just clip him up and look at his passing throughout the last couple of games, take out the first 10 minutes maybe of the game at the weekend, his passing is absolutely sublime. And even the ones that he doesn't connect with, even to think to try and play a 40-yard daisy cutter, a little reverse ball from a wide position. Other players don't even see that. So the quality of the player required to see it and to try and execute it, he deserves credit for that. And it speaks to what we've been missing in terms of being able to play the ball through the thirds and play out from the back. Unfortunately, he's also got that, that rash element. He kind of dives in all the way over by the touchline. They managed to feed the ball to Troy Parrott. And then Parrott gets a good shot away. Vicario, important save and much, much better. Pushes it really, really far wide, which gives the player coming in on his left foot a kind of bouncing volley to try and deal with. I think Vicario's still behind it, but Biss is on the pitch at this point, and let's give him some credit because he's the one that actually then gets across and makes the clearance. You never know. That ball bounces into the ground and bounces up. You don't know if that could slide over Vicario's hands as he tries to dive to make a double save. So credit to Biss, credit to Vicario for that moment. Brilliant imparts Romero. Just rein in some of that crazy. And yeah, it's you can definitely see what we've been missing. So all of those for me in one phase of play, like in one particular situation, kind of came out. I mentioned Papsar. I want to make sure that he gets a shout because for large parts of the game, you were maybe thinking, where is Pap? What has he done?
Yeah.
But actually, there were some key moments where he made a difference as well.
Yeah. So excellent. It was, and we've got to obviously shout out Sarah and Berry Valley you've done. But yeah, this is the thing I'm trying to highlight is if Spurs want to succeed and move forward, you can't always do the obvious thing, safe option of everything you can't always just be pragmatic, sensible, that's what X would do. You do have to break the ceiling and do what the elites do. And the elites do things other teams can't do. And that does require you to have better players to execute on it, granted. But you're not going to win the league and win trophies just taking the safe option of everything you do and just doing everything as a 6 or a 7 out of 10. You do have to try and excel and be in the top 0.1% of taking risks and executing on these things. And they come from practice, risk, reward. I just feel like when you get those glimpses, the big thing for me in that game was we've seen it can work. Now the big question is, can Ange get that to work consistently? Because we've all seen it work in 5-10 game moments. And then we go through reasons. It could be injuries, it could be difficult fixtures, whatever it is. We suddenly see the system go, actually, it's fallen apart again. So the key for me is, can Ange make this work now for the remainder of the season? We just need to see consistent progress from Tottenham. And then can he go into next season and go, right, I'm going to show you all, this can work. Watch me over the next 6 months. And then we can just move away from the noise and move forward on this project. So let's see. Maybe it's time to give Ange a little bit of faith and patience the rest of the season, regardless of that league position, and see if this can click. Because if it clicks like that every week, I think we're on to something quite special. There you go. Anyway, thanks, JJ. I'll wrap up there. But up the Spurs, roll on Fulham, I guess.
That's right. Come on, Tottenham.